Shalom and praise Yahweh. I would like to go over the knowledge pertaining to Genesis chapter 2, verse 10, dealing with the river that was parted into four heads. And it reads, "And a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from thence it was parted and became into four heads." Now, before this river was parted, the earth had a different geographical landscape from what we know it to be today. Something happened to cause the earth to part. In this illustration right here, we see that the continents are all fairly close together. They call this Pangea. During the time of Adam, it was called Eden. I want you to pay close attention to Africa and how India lies in close proximity to Africa, as well as the Arabian Peninsula, where on top our capital, Jerusalem, lies. In this illustration right here, we have Africa here, and then the continent of Asia, fairly close in proximity to each other, only separated by one main river. When I click play, I want you to see how this part of Asia separates from Africa and forms into what we know today to be India. Now, India, when you study the continent or the land of India, it is a subcontinent that is not connected to Asia. Over time, when the continent separated, India was pushed into Asia. In Genesis chapter 25, in Genesis chapter 10, verse 25, it explains how and why these continents separated. And it reads, "Unto Eber were born two sons. The name of one was Peleg, for in his day was the earth divided, and his brother's name was Joktan." Joktan plays a key role in this scripture in relationship to his brother Peleg, because we will find out that his children have very much to do with one of these four rivers, or one of these four heads that became rivers. When you study Peleg, Peleg's very name means earthquake. When you scroll down to verse 29, it reads, "And Ophir, and Havilah, and Joab, all these were the sons of Joktan." Pay close attention to Ophir and Havilah. They're brothers. Going back, let's reread Genesis chapter 2, verse 10. And it states, "And a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from thence it was parted and became into four heads." Verse 11, "The name of the first is Pishon, that is it which compasseth the whole land of Havilah, where there is gold. And the gold of that land is good. There is bdellium and the onyx stone." In verse 11, there's two important key points that we must consider. One, that Pishon compasseth the whole land of Havilah, And two, there's gold there, and that gold is very good. How good? 1 Kings chapter 9, verse 28 will explain. And they came to Ophir and fetched from thence gold, 420 talents, and brought it to King Solomon. In 1 Kings chapter 10, verse 11, and the navy also of Hiram that brought gold from Ophir brought in from Ophir great plenty of almug trees and precious stones. When we scroll down to verse 22, it reads, for the king had at sea a navy of Tarshish with the navy of Hiram. Once in 3 years came the navy of Tarshish, bringing gold and silver, ivory and apes and peacocks. So King Solomon exceeded all the kings of the earth for riches and for wisdom. This gold was so good that King Solomon would send his ships every 3 years to go get it, as well as other goods, to build the Temple of Solomon. When we look up Ophir in the Strongs under reference number H211, scroll down to the lexicon portion, and it states, Ophir, a very celebrated region abounding in gold. Further down in the second paragraph here, it reads, as to the situation of Ophir, various opinions have been formed. The moderns, however, have mostly supposed it to be in one of two regions, India or some part of Arabia, and that we should seek for Ophir in India, as among the ancients was supposed by Josephus. Here, they're pointing out that Ophir is India. Now, when we go and look up his brother Havilah in the Strongs under reference number H2341, in the lexicon portion, it states in paragraph 3, the first Havilah, number 1, enables us to believe, to discover the situation of the land of Havilah, Genesis chapter 2, verse 11, abounding in gold, pearls, commonly taken as bdellium, and precious stones, around which flowed the Pishon, Indus. That is very key right there. That Indus is a river in the land of India. It goes on to read, since Havilah also, Genesis chapter 10, verse 29, is mentioned in connection with countries producing gold, and as being on the Persian Gulf, it must be in the neighborhood of India. So here is a correlation between the two brothers, Ophir and Havilah, being in the region of India, according to the lexicon. Let's take a look at India here. Right here, you see in the northern part of India is the Indus River, and it goes all the way up into Tibet and China. And this river is broken off into 5 different rivers. the Indus River. And it borders the land of, in this particular map, 1805, India bordered Afghanistan. Here's another map of modern day India, and you see that it was broken off into the state of Pakistan. Still Indians, but India became, or Pakistan became its own state because they practice Islam. But the Indus River still goes predominantly through the country of Pakistan and a little bit through modern day India. Here's another map of the Indus River, as you see here, going out into the Arabian Sea. But this sea connects to the Persian Gulf, which connects to two other rivers that are spoken of in the Bible that we will touch on shortly, the Euphrates and the Tigris River. So as we look up Pishan in the Strongs under reference number 6376, going down to the lexicon, it states that water poured forth, overflowing, Pishan, a pronoun of a river, which flowing forth from the Garden of Eden surrounded the land of Havilah, i.e., India. Further down it states, I prefer the Indus, which really surrounds India on the west and was near to the Hebrews. Again, we have consistent validation that Ophir, Havilah, and the Pishan River are all connected to India, and that the river that is being talked about in Genesis chapter 2, verse 11 is the Indus River. Going back to Genesis chapter 2, verse 13, it reads, and the name of the second river is Gihon. The same is it that compasseth the whole land of Ethiopia. The key point that we want to focus on is that it compasseth the whole land of Ethiopia. Here is a map, an old map of Africa. And as you can see, Ethiopia expanded through the whole central continent of Africa. We have lower Ethiopia on the northern portion of Africa to the west, and then we have upper Ethiopia more to the east. And then we have what they called in this time Abyssinia, which is the ancient name of Ethiopia. All of this area is connecting the river, what they call it today as the Nile River. Here's another map of southern Africa. And in this map, you see Ethiopia goes all the way down to the south tip of Africa, what today is known as South Africa. And then further north, it also states that this region is also Ethiopia. Notice that this river, the Nile River, comes all throughout the land, going all the way down till you get to these two lakes. And one last map of Africa here. And in this map, still consistently, Ethiopia is in the central of Africa and has a bigger empire than what we see in modern day maps or the land of Ethiopia today. It was way more expansive. Then you also see here the Nile River going all the way down into the land of Ethiopia. Breaks off a little bit because this is a country wholly unknown to the Europeans at the time, but the Nile River goes all the way into the lakes that you see right here. This lake as well as this lake. In Genesis chapter 2, verse 14, it reads, "And the name of the third river is Hiddekel, that is it, which goeth towards the east of Assyria, and the fourth is Euphrates." Let's take a look at Hiddekel. Going to the Strong's under reference number H2313, Hiddekel means rapid, and it states that one of the rivers of Eden, which coursed east towards Assyria, better known as the Tigris. So Hiddekel is the Tigris River. And the last river, and the fourth river mentioned here in Genesis chapter 2, verse 14, is the river Euphrates. Let's reread. "And the name of the third river is Hiddekel, that is it, which goeth towards the east of Assyria. And the fourth river is Euphrates." Euphrates is the only river out of the four that held its name all the way up until today. In this illustrated map right here, it's a good overview of all four rivers mentioned in Genesis chapter 2, verse 10 through 12. Here we have the Indus River stemming on the northern part of India, the Tigris River going off into the land of Assyria, and the Euphrates River going off into the land of ancient Babylon, or today through the region of Iraq. And then we have the Nile River, which was mentioned in Genesis chapter 2, verse 11 as the river Gihon. And that one expanded well into what used to be ancient Ethiopia. So there you have it. In Genesis chapter 2, verse 10 through 12, the four rivers that were parted out of the Garden of Eden. Praise Yahweh.